first. Hey everybody, I'm Brett. Oh, and I was going to try something new. I'm going to try a new audio thing in these live videos that we're now doing for the Young Turks. I don't know if you've noticed, people have complained about this type of audio. That works, and it sounds better. Can I get a positive from anyone? Okay, here's the deal. What's happening right now is I wanted to go over the things that President Trump has signed. Now that he's the president, it can get confusing. There's a lot of different things that they've signed. And apparently Trump has signed the most, it's official, in his first 10 and a half days, President Trump has signed the most executive actions of any president in history. And that is a total of 20 things. Now, I'm saying he signed his name on 20 executive actions. That doesn't include the hundreds and thousands of times he's probably just sat there and signed President Trump, President Trump, President Trump all over the place, probably on things. You wanted the aluminum hat? It's right here. But probably just on things he finds all around. I felt like this might create some kind of crazy sound interaction. Now, there's a handful of different kinds of things he signed. There are executive orders, which are numbered and registered as a specific type of thing called an executive order that carries a certain weight. There are also proclamations, and he also invented a new kind of thing called the National Security Presidential Memo, which is a completely new category of executive action that sounds very official. We'll get into it, but really didn't exist until he made it up. And that's part of the magic of politics. Okay, first we just want to go through them. We've got 20 of them. The first was a proclamation. A proclamation that his inauguration would be a National Day of Patriotic Devotion. This is not uncommon, but calling your inauguration a National Day of Patriotic Devotion sounds really, really creepy. And I don't think it should be an official thing. I think it's way too up your own two-hole. The number two is an executive order to initiate the repeal of Obamacare. The third thing was something he didn't sign, but it was the regulatory freeze. The regulatory freeze that went through Reince Priebus's office, but essentially is a proxy for the president's order to stop any regulations that were part of the old administration. The fourth thing he signed was to pull out of TPP. A lot of people who watch Young Turks are in favor of that, signaling that he would become a more protectionist president than presidents past, including Clinton and Obama. Next was the presidential memorandum called the Gag Order, or the Mexico City Rule. The Mexico City Rule is the initiative that would stop funding for any kind of family planning organization that doesn't supports abortion. So that's the gag order, the global gag order, or the Mexico City Rule. It means it would stop funding to international organizations around the world that promote and fund abortion in any way. The sixth thing, we're already at 6, and this was in the first few days, was the hiring freeze. The 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th things, kind of through the 11th thing, were all around pipelines. The seventh executive action was a presidential memorandum for the Keystone Pipeline. The 8th was for the Dakota Access Pipeline to get them back on track. Those of you who know that President Obama said we aren't going to go forward with the Keystone Pipeline. Also, the Army Corps of Engineers said that the Dakota Access Pipeline, which a lot of Young Turks fans were taking part in very nobly, to go out into the freezing tundra of North Dakota to protest that. It gets that back on action, in addition to a presidential memorandum that would fast-track infrastructure, would system to fast-track pipeline using U.S. steel, followed by an executive order. So the first 3 were presidential memorandums around pipelines, and the 4th was an executive order to fast-track infrastructure. Now this is the kind of thing that you do with an executive order, is to set up a new process, because a lot of things that are involved in executive orders require the action of Congress, specifically in the funding of those things. Yes, it's a very adult chat today, but a lot of things that executives put forward are very ceremonial, and this thing would set up a new process for the president to fast-track infrastructure. Any governor or secretary would then refer an initiative to the White House Council on Environmental Quality, and then that would be fast-tracked if it got the thumbs up for an infrastructure spend. Next is a permit to reduce regulations for U.S. manufacturing through the Commerce Secretary. And then next is a proclamation, the National School Choice Week. Now, he declared on January 25th that the week of January 22nd would be National School Choice Week, which is very interesting to me because it's kind of like showing up, halfway through a birthday party and saying, "Oh, this whole I was here the whole time. This whole thing was completely 100%. The whole week was School Choice Week." For those of you who are looking, this is school choice is a very rhetorical way to say that you support essentially charter schools. For those following the Betsy DeVos hearings, and she just made her way out of committee into the ability to be voted on. School choice is a very controversial thing. You should read up on it. Next, the 13th was an executive order to build the wall. The 14th was an executive order to cut off funding to sanctuary cities, followed by the travel ban, or as Sean Spicer went in front of the press corps today to call it, the non-travel ban. It's not a travel ban, even though President Trump called it a ban in one of his tweets. And it wasn't even like he was doing air quotes, because he did air quotes elsewhere in the tweet, but not around ban. So it is a travel ban on people traveling from Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, or citizens of Iran, non-citizens traveling from Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen. Then he has 3 national security presidential memoranda, which he invented, including a 30-day review on military readiness, the addition to Steve Bannon to the Principals Committee, which Sean Spicer points out was using a lot of the same verbiage that was in President Obama's declarations before, but that's not what everyone was mad at. What people were really mad at was the fact that Steve Bannon was going to join the Principals Committee when people like President George W. Bush went to great lengths to make sure that politically minded messaging people weren't on the Principals Committee and did not have a place in those meetings. And it was early on the policy of Obama to have a couple times Axelrod backbench some of those meetings, but it was not anything this forward as to put Steve Bannon, who we all know is the alt-right Goebbels of this administration, to then be a fixed member of the Principals Committee. He also signed a lifetime ban on administration officials lobbying foreign governments and a 5-year ban on other lobbying. This would only apply to people who were lobbyists before they joined the administration. Apparently, there's a loophole in there that some experts have pointed out, saying that those folks who were not lobbyists before could then become lobbyists. And finally, the 20th is the one in, one out policy. That said, for any additional regulation that we bring, we have to get rid of 2 others, which is a rule of thumb type thing, which may or may not be it's far too empirical and not exactly as situationally aware as I would imagine you'd want things to be. But those are the 20 executive actions taken by the president in his first 10 and a half days in office. That's 2.5 a day, which is really impressive. I'm going to be back in a little bit to talk about something a lot more fun, which is the hashtag executive food orders that was started on HuffPo Comedy and is trending today on Twitter. So check that out in a few minutes. Thanks, guys.